All right. I'd like to welcome everybody to the pressure and tension class. I am Duke Brannos out of the mid-row. So if you look up Brannos on YouTube, you'll probably find more videos than you ever want to see. It's kind of a running joke in my kingdom. And no matter where it seems I go, I always get I've seen all your videos. So I've been adding a lot. We have a lot more coming out. There's a couple of pages on Facebook, our groups in Facebook you can go to see a number of not only some of my videos, but other classes I've taught, the classes that I'm involved with at least out there. One of the places is my local group's website, but although it's been pretty much an SCA thing for a long time, so I be aware there'll be some local stuff on there, but I post a lot of boxing videos and a lot of the videos I shoot, and that is Legio Draconis group. And then the other group I'm starting that me and Duke Sean and Viscount Tristan and Duke Rongwalder and a couple other people have started up is Coach's Corner. And what we're trying to really do there is get a place where we can help people not only become better fighters, but really what we put that together is help teachers and coaches become better at what they do and have other ideas and pass those along to their students. So both those places are great. I'll make sure, and just so everybody knows, I talk to people. I respond to messages all the time. So feel free to message me if you have a question or looking for a video. And I definitely will get back with you. I've been doing that kind of thing for probably about 20 some years now. So everything from reviewing videos, Pell videos right now, I'm usually spending a couple days a week just doing some of that stuff. But go ahead, blast me a note. Just blast me a message saying, hey, thanks for the class if you guys find it that it's useful. Today's class is about an hour long. I tend to be a talker, so we're going to try to keep most of it to an hour long, but it really depends on the questions. If you guys ask a lot of questions, it only makes it for a better class, to tell you the truth. So pressure and tension. I guess the first question is, what's the difference? Because a lot of people are like, okay, pressure and tension seem to like they're the same thing. And they are relatively close. But tension, and in the way I define tension, tends to be that pent up energy in your body or in your opponent's body, that energy before you throw something. So we can go from totally relaxed to so tense that you can't move. And that's that tension that I am talking about. And we're going to talk a lot about tension today because a number of years ago, I started using tension to, just like they do in boxing, to break down my opponents, not only physically, which is actually relatively easy to do, but mentally as well. And then pressure is that place where a person essentially probes another person, that you give that energy, you take some energy and you put a little pressure in an area, and that allows you your opponent to react in a way that you can tell what they're thinking, what they do physically, if they shift back onto their heels, if they look like they're ready to throw, before we even start the fight itself. So there is a difference between the two, but it's a very subtle difference. And sometimes probably through class, you're like, okay, I might say pressure, but it sounds more like tension. That is fine, because ultimately what we're trying to do here is just give you an idea how they're used. This is a very focused class on tension. And the first thing I want to talk about is there's a number of different types of tension. And I even took notes, so I'm going to read a little bit, which is pretty rare for me. So, but I knew the class was short, so I wanted to make sure that I could give you the best I could today. There's the internal tension, and that is the tension you hold within yourself. So I'm going to start with one piece in internal tension. It's very important. There's a level of tension. If I am totally relaxed and to do anything out of a totally relaxed state, I actually have to tense my body slightly to do something. So in boxing, the idea is to be relaxed, but be in a slight tension area where you don't have to pull things up or raise your tension in your body as far. but that tension level change is very small. So now I'm here, I'm ready to do something. I can just burst it up a little bit and then throw without having to build the tension from all the way, because that build the tension will also tell your opponent what's happening and what you're thinking about. So you want to carry a level of tension in your body that does not restrict you from movements and from pressure on your opponent and things like that. So the other part of the way it could go is that your tension is so high that if I'm rock solid right here and I'm just, gripping my sword and gripping my shield, things are happening. And some of those things that are happening is, first, you're wearing yourself out. That tension burns energy in your body. You can only do that for so long. The other big piece on that is that before you can move or do anything, you actually have to release tension to move and then re-tense back into that position. So you're wasting time and obviously you're wasting energy, but you're wasting time and you're showing your opponent things that you really don't want to show them. So you have to find a level of tension that you are comfortable in, that is not so low that you have to have a build, but not so high that you have to, here I'm locked, now I have to relax to move my sword here, and then I can lock again. That's not a great place to be in. So this is what I'm talking about, internal tension. The next type of tension is tension essentially tension in your opponent. So I'm going to go through some of these, and then we're going to talk about them. I've been lucky enough. I'll have my Squire cam move to Sir Louis, who's gonna. You want to take Sir Louis has been good enough for a number of classes so far through this to help me not only do these classes, but he's been a great partner out here for me to become a better teacher and still get some bike time in as well. And then my Squire Sergeant Saib is actually she's wonderful. She's running the camera right now for us, and so I'm big thanks to her. So we're going to talk about tension in your opponent. So this is where tension, the place I play with tension the most. And a lot of times we don't think about this. We think about, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to set something up. I'm probing my opponent, even though you're not thinking about probing your opponent. You're seeing what your opponent does and reacting to it. The tension piece is not part of a game that was played much. I am in probably better shape now than I have been in a long time, believe me. But I have a number of people in my kingdom much younger than I am, much stronger than I am. And, they're running, they're doing CrossFit. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, I never can keep up with that. But I would still burn them out. And I'd burn fighter after fighter after fighter out in just doing pickups. And the way I was doing that is I would raise their attention to a level and then leave them there and relax. And I'll show you what I mean by that right now. Let me grab my sword and shield. So what I mean by this is by raising your attention in your opponent, what you're doing is you want to build their tension up. The good part about building their tension up, you remember what I said about tension burning you down if you're carrying tension too hard. Well, this is a way to use it against your opponent. Since your opponent doesn't think about this as much, it's a simple way to leave people in and essentially wear them out to a point where they feel like they have to do something, or they have to relax, or they have to breathe. The way I first started doing this was I would wait until I see my opponent breathe, and then I would give them tension so they would suck in bad air. That's just breaking the oxygen down in their system, which physically wears them out. Later, what I found is it's a lot like a running game. You'll see most, and I'll talk about boxers later, most Eastern European boxers tend to apply tension constantly, and they find they find their places to break down and relax inside while they're applying that tension. So here's an example. I'm here, and we're both set up. He's comfortable, I'm comfortable. He doesn't care. I come in, no tension. He's still very comfortable. He's breathing, nothing's happening. He still can throw a shot. He can still do all the things he wants. He can probe where shots go. This is This is how a lot of people start a fight. I'm going to show you probably, let me take you, this is one of these real fundamental pieces of how movement helps. The first piece is, this is more of a probing movement than a tension, but it also applies tension when you get closer. You want to go ahead and step behind me? So here's an example of how you should enter into a fight. You get a chance to learn what your opponent's going to do, and it's a different way to apply tension on people. So the first step is, normally, this is how we enter into a fight. Now we're ready. So I'm entering into a fight into his strongest defense and offense. Good part is, it's my strongest defense and offense too. But in this game, I don't really want to do that. I'd rather enter into an area that maybe isn't as strong for him. So watch. From way outside of range, we have probably 10, 12 feet between us. I'm just going to do this. And I'm going to see which way he does. So you saw that he just stepped off and cut that angle. And I'm going to keep. There you go. Now he's starting to turn. Notice I'm still not in range, but now he's not sure what's going on. So now I'm moving that way. And then I move that way. Again, not even in range yet, but he's fighting me. You notice I'm not really fighting him yet because I'm the one that's controlling the angle change. So that simply, we are already starting a fight without actually being in range. Instead, we have a bad habit. We want to walk up and then start a fight while we're in range. So beware. The idea is here is if my opponent doesn't turn and he just turns his feet and kind of turns in place, then I know he actually tends to be a turner instead of a tracker. And what I mean by turning, he's going to turn his body instead of just following me and cutting the list off. So all of a sudden I'm here, so I'm going to go over here, and he's noticed he's going to start turning again, and now he's backing off because he wants to create room because he's not ready yet. I've learned so much before I even started this fight. I learned that he doesn't tend to track side to side, which is good for me because this is what happens now. So here I am, I engage on the side, and I give a hard push, and then I'm back over here. Because in a turn, he's actually behind me, essentially one step. I'm leading the fight. So when a person turns their body, go ahead and stand right up here. When a person turns their body, right here, you notice his foot stayed in. So this gives me another opportunity. So he's just turning his waist, which now puts him into different defense and different footwork that he normally is. Push here, then I'm over here. So what I learned before I even got into engagement is what my opponent's doing. The next level of this is building the tension in your opponent as you do get closer. So I'm going to enter the same way. There we are. I'm entering the same way. He's already built tension, and I'm pretty comfortable. So here he is, but now he's relaxed. So there we go. And now he's going to put some energy. And then I relax again, and I find it. So the hard part on those tension pieces is I'm the leader in those. So the good part is he's responding to what I'm giving him. In some fights, what happens is you can essentially get right on the edge and start pushing really hard, and then let him, he's still in tension. I'm actually relaxed at this point. Notice he's still in guard, so go ahead. See how he's still in guard? I'm actually relaxing at this point. He's still fighting me, but I'm at a range I don't care. But then he's going to realize it, and he's going to stop. And then I'm going to push again. And then, there's back down, push again. See, now what's happening is as he's trying to find the space to relax his body and breathe, that's when I reapply some small pressure to pull him back. So after you do this constantly, what happens is that person's having harder and harder time getting oxygen to his blood. What usually happens in these scenarios is tension in your body will cause constriction of your chest. There's a great black belt magazine. They figure it's about 20% less airflow into your lungs. So if you can pull your opponent into constant tension or tension in breath, that means he's getting less air than you are. He's also wasting more energy. And then at some point, he feels like he has to give it up. In this case, we saw Louis do it once. Here he is. He's in tension. I'm relaxing. He's in tension, and then he's going to find a place. He's like, I'm done. I want to leave. Now you notice I'm not, and then he wants to leave again, right? How much time does he have to relax? So he doesn't feel like he has a lot of time to relax, but I'm actually at the edge of range. I'm the one controlling the movement. I know exactly where my time to relax is. I'm breathing. I also often tell people want to breathe this way. Like we're working. I'm backing off and I'm breathing. Okay, I'm breathing. I'm done. I'm going to go back in. Why give that person that opportunity? I find that the best place to breathe is actually moving forward. In other words, I put tension, I let free him a little bit, or I put really hard tension, he wants to back up. And then there we go. And then he wants to back up again. And I stay right on that edge where he has to hold a level of tension, and because he's responding to me, I'm the one that's leading it. So I can control my tension and breathing much simpler. Now, if he gets into that place where he leads it, then I have to watch what I'm doing. Then I have to create bigger times to do that. I have to create bigger gaps to suck in breath at better times. But that's the management of tension in your body. We don't think about that much, but it's a really important role in what we play. All right, let me see what we had in. Okay, so on the pressure side, you go ahead and grab my sheet. On the pressure side, this is where what I would say is pressure in this same fight. Here I am. We're both relatively comfortable, but I pressure the elbow, and then I pressure back up to the head. Okay, offside head, leg, and I can make those movements bigger and smaller depending on my opponent. I'm not using a lot of energy here, but I'm I'm using movement to create pressure. Now, if I want to push some tension, then I add a little tension in my hand, and now you see how much more he really drives into it and builds his tension in his body.
Question popped up in the chat.
All right.
How do you change that flow if someone gets that advantage?
So that's the key. And in a fight, and you can watch boxing fights like this a lot, there's a lot of stuff to learn once you understand what's really happening in a fight. It's a battle of control, and this probing piece is also a battle of control. And we'll talk about that a little bit. But here's the way usually I'll get out of him leading the tension. So I'm going to let him lead the tension here. Okay. And now I'm backing away. He's just staying on me. Hey! Now you notice I have all the time in the world. In fact, now I'm going to change. See? So in some of those, what I do is I give I give really a burst of tension at a point where, or make it look like I'm actually going to have to commit to something, and he has to respect it. The question is how fast he can recover from it, and if he makes, and not only how fast, but that his movement, his shield, his sword are still in a good enough position that he's not giving something up in the recovery. So what I did in this case is I gave him what I call a jab foot or a stomp foot. You'll see this in boxing all the time. Here I go. Hey! You notice that just creates all kinds of room. I have a free space here to take a giant breath. Not only do I have a free space here to take a breath, but this fight is stopped. In other words, I have range. Even if he tries to run in on me, I can back out of it and still control myself. So I can also just change pace. In other words, he's on me, right? And he's pushing. Right, there we go. He's pushing. Hey! There you go. Now he has to re-enter again. So in that re-entry is where the fight redevelops again, and a person has a chance to take control and try to push their dominance back on or tension back on that opponent. So the big piece is to make that break. Let me show you a clearer idea how to change pace. He's following me. Right? You notice even if I speed up really slowly, he just goes faster. Okay? Now what? Ready? He's following me. So what I do is I just change my pace from fast to slow. And what's happening in the opponent is now you're actually setting a pace. He's trying to follow you at a specific range. Because you're changing it, you're setting the pace. You get a step ahead of him. So essentially it gives you the beat. I hope that helps that question. So, so in the pressure scenario here, we're a lot, this is more, I use pressure for probing. And we covered that a little bit. Beware, if you have a younger opponent, they may not realize this looks like pressure. All right? And you're probably not seeing a lot, but His Majesty is probably going, oh yeah, I know that one. Because and I explain this as connection to your opponent, it's something you learn as well. But you have to, in a really high-end fight, you have to know exactly any twitch of body movement that your opponent makes. You can even get this whole tension in their body feel and can tell what's happening. So you can see the small rise in tension before they throw a blow. You can see a shift into a front foot before they fall in. So those are the kinds of things. For a person that's lower, you got to be careful because you might have to give him something bigger. So here I am, high pressure Louis. He doesn't right now. He's following me a little bit, but he doesn't care as much. But so I do this, all of a sudden he cares because he's like, oh, I have to. So that's a little bit of the idea on pressure. All right, so on to, I want to make sure I'm covering the topics into tension and opponent. We covered the breaking an opponent's breath down. You can literally get to a point where you're making your opponent hold their breath so long that and when they're like, okay, I got to stop, and they start walking back, and you're staying right on edge. Mentally, they start breaking down, and in fact, the fear starts because they are literally suffocating themselves because they're not getting enough oxygen in their blood, and I've seen people throw up. I've seen people get body cramps right in the middle of a fight from tension in applying this type of tension. One of the biggest things, though, I see is that they get to that point that they really can't control their sword as well because their body is worn out. But they're like, I have to do something. This is my last killing blow. And they just jump on you because that's all they got. But at that point, you don't care because all they're doing is wasting energy with what is usually poor shots. And then a lot of times in those cases, I just suck them up. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna push him so hard until he has to jump in, and then I just suck up some shots. He has to take a break, and then I follow him. And at that point, a lot of times they're like, just hit me. I just want to be dead. The key in using tension in a fight like this is that fight can't, the fight doesn't last 1 minute. Doesn't last 2 minutes. I mean, any fight can last 1 minute or 2 minutes. But to be a smart fighter, some of those fights don't last that way. Alan on last night used a great example of that. I'm going to use it, and I'll probably keep using it. I'll credit him. And that is, there's no shot clock in this game, right? There's no one saying you have 1 minute to kill me. Take your time. Break your opponent down. Understand what they're doing. Because in the end, the fight is one, it may be a little more boring because we're not throwing all the adrenaline out there, but you know what? At the end, it's very satisfying knowing that you defeated your opponent in a way that was in perfect understanding and safety of yourself. So, that's that whole good guard, good timing, all of those things are in place.
We do have a comment about chewing gum that helps to keep you breathing.
Actually, so I have seen a lot of people that hold tension, and I'll use Sir Madare, a local guy, just got knighted not too long ago. He did the chewing gum piece. You have to be a little careful chewing gum because you got gum in your mouth, easy to choke on. Second piece is easy to bite your tongue. So be a little careful on that. But it is a method I've seen people use. The second one is Madare happened to be also in his previous, well, he still is. He does a lot of court gesture stuff. So I used to make him tell me jokes in the middle of a fight, or I'd make him whistle me a song in the middle of a fight. The idea is not only does doing those things allows you to breathe and create a tempo for your breathing, but it also helps you relax your body some and find that optimal tension zone instead of what happens when you hold your breath, you start building more and more tension. To me, I love it. Hold your breath as long as you want, and I'll be happy, because that's all I'm trying to get you to do. But even chewing gum, tension will just stop you from chewing your gum. But if you have breathing control issues, it is definitely something you want to work on. Yeah, and then actually there was a great, Sir Louis just reminded me of an article I posted about box breathing. It helps you understand how to relax your body, how to breathe better. If somebody's interested, ping me. I'll try to post it up into one of the groups again. It was done by a Navy SEAL. They do a lot of breathing exercises that not only help them understand how to breathe under tension, but it also helps them understand how to control their calmness in their body and brain. What tension does is you have to train for it, because you're going to be at a higher level of activity than you were before. Before, I would stand here and we'd fight, and then he'd break off and I'd break. I'm like, and I'm breathing too. So now what we have to do is, it's a constant tension. Again, like the Eastern European boxers, you can find that in like Triple G, Lomachenko, Uskat. There's a ton of them. I have lots of videos for those. But what happens is, so he's going to do the method essentially most people do and want to break off. And I'm going to do the other one. Notice how I'm keeping right on the edge. Even when he's like, okay, I'm not going to break off, I'm going to run at him. And then I get back into the edge. Notice I'm trying to stay in the exact space range that I need to keep tension on him and still control my own. What you actually end up into is something a little closer to a jog. Just like jogging, what you want to do is watch your heart rate, your breath, everything else in that space. But you notice when I'm walking at him, that's when I'm relaxing and breathing. Most people, they're walking, they're thinking of striking. I'm walking, I'm just thinking about keeping that exact same distance between me and him. So one piece is you have to be, and understand this, you have to be very good at movement. In other words, you need to understand how you move well to make this work. Simple tension can always be applied, no matter how you move. But to keep this constant tension, you have a little bit more energy, and movement becomes critical. So, relating it back to running, in a long distance run where you have a little more time, to break down maybe somebody else that's at your same level, sometimes as long as you have the pace, you can set the pace. So if I'm running along with Louis and we're going, and I'm like, okay, not sure I can win because I've seen him, he's probably at the end, he's going to have a kick. And I'm not going to have a kick because I'm not very good at that. So what I'll do is I'll pick up the pace in the middle. Remember, now I'm setting the pace. And he's going to be like, oh, I got to keep up with him. And I'm doing it slow enough that he's going to gradually pick up that pace. Then I'm going to slow my pace down, relax my heart, get my breathing under control again. He's going to be ahead of me. But then he's going to, at some point, going, oh, my pace is way too high. And he's going to say, okay, I'm going to slow my pace. By then, I may have had a minute or two to catch my breathing. Now I can just pick up my pace enough to not allow him to come all the way down. And that's that changing of heart and breathing that's happening in a running scenario. But that same thing happens here. And we do that with tension. So some of the tension in your opponent and then external tension, you can see they're going to overlap. So external tension is the tension that you're showing your opponent. In other words, a lot of times you get into a fight, the more tension you give them, the more tension they go up. So I'm going to show you an example of this. Me and Louis are very comfortable. We're just kind of probing. Now I'm going to get a little more active. I'm going to get a lot more active. Okay, So now what happens is, as I get more active and maybe apply a little more tension, Louis' tension starts rising as well, because he's like, oh, I got to move. I got to stay in front of him. And he's responding a little bit, so that helps me. Sometimes he'll change it, and then we're fighting to who's putting the tension and who's the leader. But that's where tension's rising. So in the rising tension, what you're using there is, he doesn't breathe well, or he's already tired, bring that tension up on your opponent. Because what's going to happen is he's going to burn out before you. And then if you're leading that tension, you can find more areas to find breath inside there. So, but that's how you raise the tension, using external tension to push your opponent's tension up. In reverse, here's a real big piece that people don't think about, and that is how we use reducing tension to create a shot. So here's an example of that. Here we are. Bang. So in that case, I was applying a lot of tension, and then I release it. And he's like, oh, fight's done. You get a little sag in a shield. You essentially, he goes from working tension to, oh, that sword drops. He relaxes his body because that's what he's been waiting for. But that's when you're actually going to deliver the shot that you want to deliver in that gap. You can find that. You can test people. You probe people to see how they react to reducing tension, to see if there's opportunity, taking that external tension, reducing that external tension, and seeing an opportunity.
We got a question.
All right.
In order to apply tension like you're showing, how much does a fighter need to have a quick threat? In other words, if a newer fighter has telegraphed or slow offensive threats, can they still apply tension if their opponent doesn't respect the need to respond to all their movements?
So in this case, I would call myself probably medium to a little bit above medium on throwing. But I'm sure a number of you have heard of Duke Rongwalder. A lot of people think he's incredibly fast. And we laugh all the time because, even our people at our fight practice like, oh my God, you're so fast, and we laugh. Not that they're fast. He applies the same type of tension and work I do, but he's a methodical thrower. In other words, he makes you go into a position and then delivers a blow. It is fast because he already knows where you're going when he delivers that blow. So he's throwing before you even get there. He is actually a very slow thrower, but those setups are absolutely beautiful. So you have to be in those positions to understand how to set that up. So I'd love to probably do it, and I could probably show you something like that. He's a lefty, but the idea here is I could be a slow thrower. All I'm doing is here I am, I'm putting tension, and then I'm trying to bait him into throwing something. He's going to step forward, and then I'm going to throw. So as I know he's going to do this, okay, I make him step forward or make him go down. I know what he's going to do. So next time I make him go down, I'm throwing as he's going down. I don't have to be fast because he's in movement and my sword has time to get there. And I'm throwing at the area he's going to be in. And that's what Rongwalder does. He's an expert at it. I wish I could show you exactly how he does it, but it's for me, it's hard to actually slow down. But he's not the only person I've seen do that. So again, he's won a lot of, he's in all the heroic champions, all those kinds of things. He is a very slow thrower, but absolutely uses tension to break down people all the time, making people suck in air and throwing shots as they're breathing, all of those kinds of things. So yes, the answer is yes, you can do it. And Rongwalder's a prime example of how to do it. So, all right. So back to external tension. The next layer of external tension is, you saw that I would essentially I give him a lot of tension, and he's beautiful defense. He never has to worry about anything because the tension's there. So I'm like, okay, and none of that's going to work. So I'm like, I relax. So I'm like, here, I'm moving. Bang. Right? As soon as you stop moving, he's like, oh, the fight's done. Here I am. And you throw. So once again, saying that a second time because that really happens. But here's another example. What I learned a long time ago when I lost speed was that there's always somebody faster than you. I use tension to pull those fast people to not know if I'm going to deliver something or not. In other words, you know, and then this is people like Al-Anon and Duke Rurik and a number of guys that their hand speed is incredibly fast. So what I'll do is I'll just constantly put tension and then break it off so they never know when the shot's going to be delivered. So here I am. Hey, not sure. Hey. So you see those jerks in there? Especially if they're throwers. A lot of fast people are going to counter throw or throw when they think you're going to do something. Well, here he is. He's going to, and then I'm not a big deal. I'm not committed to it. So he's not going to hit. Then at some point, here I am. Hey, then you're in. Okay, you create that opportunity. You take that freeze that you're giving them. They're like, oh, he's not going to throw again, but this time you're gonna. So you're using tension to change the beat of your throw. Another big part in tension, and it's back to what we were originally talking about, is I have a number of people that adrenaline spikes a lot higher than mine now. That was me when I was younger. I can no longer beat people that adrenaline spikes so fast. In other words, if I have him in tension and I throw a blow, a lot of times he's faster than I am because Louis actually has a bit more speed than I do. Now, his adrenaline I'll go from 80 to 100 and Louis will go from 80 to 110. You know, he's going to overspeed me, or I'm going to go from, 70% to 90 in a slower amount of time that adrenaline goes through my body than it takes him to get from 70% to 90. So in those cases, what's happening is now he's going to beat me all the time. So by reducing opponent's tension tension in their body, you can make it a longer time. Like I was showing you before, I would give him I'd relax and then I'd throw. Well, what's happening there is I'm taking his, I'm still, even that relaxation looks like my tension's coming down. It's not coming down that much. But on his, if I can get him to drop from 70% to 50% and I'm dropping to 60%, in that tension level, then I'm still ahead of him. And I can maybe make that jump in adrenaline and throw faster than he can. So that's a little idea on how to use that. But even worse, you have young people out there and they're filled with adrenaline. And in fact, usually they're filled with the adrenaline that you give them. So if I start building my adrenaline up and pushing tension, they're like, yeehaw, this is a fight. And now you're actually getting their level of fight up into that 80, 90% level where they're, and which ends up being even higher than you sometimes. And now that the bursts are incredibly fast because they're into it. Their body is totally free. Their mind is free. They absolutely are calculating and exploding through things faster than you can. To take advantage of that is you don't give them any attention or attention in their body. In other words, make them build their own adrenaline. So this is an example. It's going to be a hard example because I'm not going to give Louis any tension. I'm going to still hold the amount of tension I want, but I'm not going to do a lot of probing. I'm not going to give him a tension level that allows him to build. So he's looking. He's probably trying to find that place to make this a fight. Younger people are like, I got to find something. And then as a while, they're like, I don't know how to do it. I usually wait for my opponent to give me all my tension. Wait for my opponent to drive my energy up. So what happens in those places is a lot of times for younger people, that's what they live on. They live on an adrenaline burst. As an opponent, if I give them that adrenaline burst, they're going to be better fighter. That bout will be better than it could be. You'll see that a lot of times in the younger fighter. He might be faster than the other guy, but the other guy comes out and one-shots him because he never got the chance to even get into the game. But if I help him get into the game, he's going to have a great fight. I may still win, and he's going to come over to you and goes, oh, my God, that was the best fight I ever had in my life. And you're going to be like, oh, well, that's nice. That was great. I will tell you one thing, and people can agree or disagree. There are times when you want to give somebody a great fight. In a tournament, I don't want my opponent to fight his best fight of his life. I want him to fight a fight I can beat him in. I get hey, give me 100%. And I look at the guy, and I'm like, I'm going to give you enough energy out of me to beat you. And it's probably not going to be 100%, because 100% might drive him higher than I can. And then at that point, I'm giving him opportunity to beat me. I don't want that. If he gets too much energy going in his body, go ahead, Louis. Louis is a champion at this. You notice now all I'm doing is I'm just waiting him out a little bit, right? And at some point, it gets boring for him. And he's like, okay, I got to retry something else. So he stops. He's like, oh, I got to stop. And then I'm like, here I am. And now he's like, okay, well, now I got to do it. So if he brings up his pressure again, I'm like, okay, I can wait. And at some point, he's getting tired. And he's like, okay, and now I'm going to go right back over here again. And now he's like, this ain't working. Well, that may be the only thing that ever worked for him. So now he has to rethink his game. Anytime you can make an opponent change his game, then you're actually manipulating the fight itself, and that's where you want to be. We're going to talk about setting up a trap. So there's a lot of great coaches out there in boxing. Traps are always used in boxing. You take a look at Muhammad Ali setting traps constantly. The rope-a-dope is just a trap. He's leaning against it to pull you, and then you reach over your center. So he's leaning way back here, because what's happening now is this. I'm here, he doesn't have to lean. But as soon as I'm here, you notice how he leans his body. And he's throwing stuff, lots of energy on that front foot. So now he's throwing stuff, and then I find my time, and then I throw, and then I'm back out again. It's harder for them. So Muhammad Ali was a master at setting traps. And you can see it, even not against the ropes, he was doing that all the time. So a lot of times here in the last couple of years, I've been doing a lot more for tension purposes, kind of like a little bit of the boxer's head. I do a lot of slips now with the head and things like that. But so if that person doesn't want to engage and they're at this edge, I'll shift over right onto my toes a little bit, and look, he wants to throw. And they really want to throw. I am totally going to slip this thing and shift right back out of it. And then I'll be back here again. And they want to throw again. Now push my head on either side of the nose a little bit. And they want to throw. And I have people that are like, I don't want to throw, but you're making me. Stop making me want to throw. Because the opportunity is just, it's so hard to not want to do something. Because that's, especially in a sport that's been, one of those things that we've always, it's like, oh, I got something. I'm going to do something. Well, you got to remember that a lot of those somethings are traps people are setting. Rongballer sets traps up all the time. So he gives you a little bit of like, oh, I could see that guy looking at my leg a little. I could see him. He wants that leg. I'm like, give it a little bit more. So here he is. I'm going to show the lefty Rongballer here, because I get so bored in fights with him. And in fact, I make fun of him all the time. Every heroic fight that he goes to, here he is. He's like, look, my leg is open. And he throws it. Go ahead. And then he hits him in the back shoulder blade. So, I'm like, don't you, come back from the field. He's all happy. So here's that same shot. Here I am. Hey, look at that leg. Bang. Right? He voids and he throws at the same time. Doesn't have to be fast at all. He already threw him into something. 80% of his fights go there, and I'm like, oh, someday I have to teach you a new shot. But it works, so he doesn't care about it. But that's him pulling somebody into a trap, right? So you can use tension and pressure to set up those traps too. So in this case, what I'm doing is here I am. Look at my head. See, he wants to right away. He wants to throw something, right? And then what I'll do is I'll set up a front foot step so that I can rip his leg. So here I am. I give him a little more room. He wants to come now, right? So he's still wanting to come. And as soon as I can get him to move that front foot, then I'm going to slide and throw an inside leg shot. Oof. Because I've known earlier that he wants to do something. Just because I stick that head in there. Here I am. I'm leaning back. Nothing to do. There we go. There, now he's like, oh, I want that. He's smiling because he does. Right? And it's just natural. He knows. Me and Louis fight all the time. Right? But it is, I mean, every time somebody sticks something out there, what do you first thing you think? Right. I want to hit it, right? Yep. So there's ways to control your opponent with this. I'm giving a little bit of trap, a little bit of tension too, because I could be right here and there's no tension. But as soon as I do that, you notice my feet don't move. But as soon as I do this, you notice he wants to do something, or maybe this time he's just going to back out, right? All I'm doing is shifting my balance. Now be careful that you don't shift at your center and bring shoulders forward too much. Stick that head out there, but keep your shoulders high. All right? We don't want to do that too much. You got to be careful how to work that, because you also want to make sure your body's stacked and that you can still have your hips under you to throw shots. But it is absolutely a great trap to push people in. If it doesn't work very well, then shift it over a little. Shift it from side to side. I take my nose and I look at one eye and then I look at the other eye. And it looks this small. Ready? So now all of a sudden I'm changing how fast I'm doing it. And then he's like, oh, I want to break away. And then sometimes I'll just change that. I'll change the distance of my head. Here we are. Okay. So what's happening is you're just using that to see what your opponents, you're essentially using it as a space to put tension, to create traps, to see what your opponent's really doing. You're also probing with that. You know, if he's a thrower, he's going to fall in, and then you can just fall out and throw at the range you want to throw at. Tell you the truth, if you're a small person and you love fighting right here, so if I'm a guy that fights at a longer range, Louis, you be the long range, I can't ever get, here I am fighting Alan on. So he's using, a pole arm for a sword, and I can never get close to him. So what I have to do is he's always on his back foot. So in this case, what I'm going to do is like, hey, look, you can throw from there. See, now he's shifting a little onto the front foot. Yeah, really, you can throw from there. Right? So what happens is I'm going to wait at some point. I'm going to try to pull him into something from this range because I want to get close enough to throw a shot. As soon as I'm going to wait until he shifts. Then I'm here. Now we're in a range I can throw it. For anybody that fights Alan on, this range is still probably my C range, but his B, still dangerous because of his speed, but at least you have opportunity. All right, so that's another way to use that pulling head to try to get people to shift their feet forward and backwards. The next piece is push and pull.
So on the push-pull, we're trying to create tension, and we're trying to take the tension away and try to almost force your opponent to create tension by coming back in. So if I increase this extra range here, then by leaning back here, then he's going to start reaching in toward me. And then I can push back against. So I can push him and I can pull him into me.
Right. So we practiced this drill quite a bit. I kind of stole this drill from Paul Dupaul, and that is we practice in a movement drill. This is a lot. I explained this movement and the push and pull a little bit like you're dancing. It happens the same way in dancing. Is really you want to create a flow between a connection and a flow between you and your opponent. So if me and Louis are here, we practice this and that usually with no sword and shield, but we practice. In fact, we'll go ahead and throw those away. We'll practice this in this method. So I'll push, and you notice he's moving back at the same amount, keeping his back straight, just like I'm trying to keep mine. Now pull, there we go. We're creating a connection, and we're doing things exactly alike. So the way you want to do this at first is very slow. And then later you can add a little speed. The idea here is you're not overreading your opponent. You're at that point where you're just in motion and change with your opponent all the time. This piece here allows you to make that connection. That connection allows you to read and understand your range far better than ever before. So in that push and pull, what you're actually doing is you're learning how to make a good connection with your opponent, and that connection is what's built. And then at some point you can find that place where you can break that connection and throw. In Tai Chi and in wrestling, they do this all the time. So and tension becomes a real thing. I'm going to go into wrestling first. So in the wrestling, a lot of times is you make some connections on their arms. Same in judo and everything else. There's a physical connection here. If I'm in super tension here, Louis can totally take advantage of me because he's relaxed. He can just pull me into something and throw me. So we're both in minor connection. So sometimes I'll give him tension and then he'll give counter tension. So he's like, or he'll give me like, okay, I'm going to take that, but I'm going to start grabbing over here and pulling. So now I don't want to do that because he's taking advantage of it. So I'll put some tension on his neck. He might put some counter tension, right? So that I can't do it. This is the same thing happening in a fight, but at distance. A lot harder to understand because physically you're not there, but it's the same thing. Same thing in if you're doing any Wing Chun. Like, the idea here is we're in flow, right? So here we are, right? So here we go on the backs of hands, right? Back. Yeah. So here we are, right? So we're in this flow, and what I want to do is I want to find a place where I can change that speed, and he's not going to catch me, or I change it up, right? Where he gave me too much tension or not enough tension, where I can then counter into something. The idea there is that flow and that change of flow is the same thing we're doing out here. I'm flowing, and if I make this happen, all right, so all of a sudden he does a nice fading move. But this time I'm here and I pull him and he starts stepping. Well, I know now at this point I can step back right in here. And I go from B or C range into a closer range that he's not ready for because he took a large enough step I could take advantage of. So you're changing because that connection wasn't well set up. So that's the idea in a lot of sports is what you want to do is find a weakness or in that connection and then take advantage of it. Okay, and that's what we do with that push and pull drill. The better you're at this, the better you can just walk around with each other, right? And cutting angles, right? And then I cut angles. There we go. And then he's following. So he's always in front of me. This is very difficult, right? If you stay in front of your opponent, the good part is his body is always straight on me. His shield's always in good form. His sword's always in good form. As soon as, stay right there, as soon as I'm here, now all of a sudden, his shield doesn't have as much, or his sword's in behind his shield, and he has to turn his body. Now he loses possibility hip. The only way he can push that hip anymore is by taking a step. So all of a sudden, I might lean even harder over here. Now he's really twisted up in his core, and that breaks a person down when their core is not in the right spot. So there's a lot of the basics on tension and pressure. You notice there's a lot of talk. There's a lot of movement base on that. There's so make sure that you have a good movement base. Make sure that you're understanding that there is pressure and tension in the game. The more you understand, go to your opponent and give him some tension, and then step back and say, what did he do? Because you're going to learn a lot better. A lot of times we just go out there and we do it without knowing it. But the more you understand what you're doing, the more you can replicate it, and the more you can understand and set up the chess match to hit somebody in. So take those times. It's like, Louis is I'm like, okay, you're the defensive guy. You're not going to throw. And now you set up some stuff and you work some tension and see, and then ask them what they felt like, or watch and say, I felt like you did this. A good drill for this, a lot of times we do a one-shot drill. In other words, he's going to be defense, I'm going to be offense. I can touch just simple touches that aren't meant to be throws, but the idea is as soon as I throw a killing blow, or at least one that looks like a killing blow, if he blocks it, he wins that round, and then he's offense and I'm defense. So here we are. He's going to be defense and I'm going to tension, and I'm just working. And I'm finding ways. I'm going to walk it around, and I'm going to find ways. Yeah, his ideas, there we are. And then I'm going to fight, break, right? And then I'm going to commit to something that I believe he left an opening to. And
I do have a question.
All right.
We have a question in the chat. As a smaller framed fighter, how do you use your height to your advantage moving in and out of range?
So to give you a feel there, I am about, both me and Louis are about 5'9", which is considered small in the SCA. I'm a relatively short fighter. I use that same thing, like I'll change tension. So here I am, I want to get in on Louis, or Al-Anon if you're, in that scenario. So I want to get in, so I give him some tension. If I see him lean back, I'll never get in. If he's leaning back, as soon as I commit, he's walking. But if I want to get in, and so I'm here, and I'm like, okay, I'll move a little bit, and I'll see how he moves. And then if he follows me, I'll wait until that front step so that I could get into a range that I want to get into. So you really have to watch and pull and practice all these things. I could give him really hard tension. Here's another way to do it. Louis, I want you to run back as soon as I give you anything. Ready? Oh, I didn't do nothing, right? This is what I call the jab foot again. Ready? Oh, so he's like, I'm not falling for it. Oh, see, now he's like, I'm not sure when he's going to do it. So I make it look like I'm going to do it, then I don't. There's a great YouTube out there, Kimbo Slice video out there. There's actually two, and one of them actually shows you what connection does. It's a connection with your opponent. It's very interesting. You can create a really powerful connection with your opponent. It's like, I'm here and we're into this. And then I'm like, I look. All I do is look away. And I'm not really looking away. I'm just looking at something else. I'm concentrating on, but I'm breaking that connection between me and him. I'm right into his thread. I'm looking in there. I'm creating something. And then I relax and I'm like, so that connection's lost and that he's searching for it still, but it's too late because you're already traveling in. And Kimbo Slice's video shows that I'm going to punch his hand, right? So here I am. I'm going to drive straight right now, but what happens is you get tension in your body and he pulls it away. And that hurts my shoulder. Ready? Aren't you ready? Come on. All right. So the idea is I don't show connection. Even worse than that, here I am. Ready? Do it again. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to do it. There you go. So he's getting away pretty fast. But so now here I am. Ready? So I look at you and I throw a blow. So what happens in that is that connection's broke. It's a really easy exercise to see. So that same thing happens here. I get some connection and I look away. It takes them a second to realize that you're actually shifting into them. You kind of lose that perspective. Also, there's a lot of movement that allow you to hide the change in your perspective or your line. I'll give you an example of that. Here's one of the worst things you can do as a little person: stand up. Remember, you're fighting. Back in most sports, you cannot have straight legs. So be aware that you should be in those legs all the time. If I stand up, now I'll stand up when I'm throwing blows and stuff, but if you stand up, and usually when I stand up to throw a blow, it's at the end of the blow, not in the transition of the blow. So we're way back, and I'm going to make her, because she wants the full shot. But you travel in a perfect line. Your head's not popping. You're traveling directly at your opponent because the fastest way to your opponent and the closest way is directly at them. You transition. Bang, I'm here now. Okay? The eye doesn't pick up, it picks up your perspective coming straight at you as easy as it does either by a step of the foot or by a raise of the head. Anything that breaks perspective, your eye picks up very fast. I use a train track method for this. You stand on a train track and a train's coming at you. Super hard to tell how fast it's coming because you have no perspective. It's getting larger, but that large is getting, the largeness of it is getting a constant, just a little bit. Perspective change isn't big enough. You stand out to the side and you watch that train, and now you can see how fast it's going. So that's the idea on movement and changing that movement so that you reduce the amount of perspective you're giving your opponent.
Does your opponent's perception of how threatening you are from the get-go, say that they are a knight and you're not, so does their perception of how threatening you are from the get-go affect your ability to create sufficient tension, if any? And if so, what can you do about that?
So, I guess the hard part there is that a lot of times what happens is it creates tension in that opponent naturally. That's the giving the fight to somebody. a lot of people that gain a reputation essentially create that mystic thing around them.
I think they're asking more from the perspective of the person who's not scary.
Right. So for you to change that, a lot of times what you have to do is first is you can't just suck it in from them. You have to say, I beat him before, or this is going to be the time I beat him. And you have to be in front of that match. And if you're not feeling that, then you have to make bigger movements at farther ranges so that you're safe, and make them realize like, I'm not sure what this person's going to do anymore. Because if you randomize what you're going to do against that person, it makes it harder for even a top guy. Like, all right, that was a pretty big move, or that was pretty burst, intensive. I have to be a little more careful. And as soon as you can bring that little tension into them where they're like, all right, I'm going to have to add tension. Now you're unfortunately making him more dangerous, but at least you're putting him in a place now. It's like, okay, I got a little tension into him. Now let's see if I can get a little bit more. And that's the piece, is you always want to keep that little bit more. So if I'm, fighting Morgan and I'm way out here, he's super comfortable. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna try to push off to the edge of his foot and see if he turns his foot out or slides to the side. If he doesn't, I'm pretty good here. Now I push. I got a slight turn on him. I'm gonna push a little bit and see if his tension rises. If it doesn't, then I'm like, okay, was there opportunity because his tension didn't rise or not? Okay, I'm gonna be right here. I'm gonna smack or just throw a jab at it, maybe right at the top of his sword, or like right at where Keon meets the sword. Strong part of the sword, you're at range, bang. You want to see if that creates a blocking tension or it creates a movement tension from that opponent. You're still in a safe position. You're testing and you're trying. You're like, now he has to and now I'm not really sure what this person's going to do. So now he's going to create tension in his body to say, okay, now I got to get into this fight, and because I don't like that he's testing me. It is my turn to test him. So now you're drawing him into tension, maybe a comfortable tension for him, but at least you're drawing him into the fight. And when you get him there, the best part is you're in a better place to control that fight. So that's the place I'd start. And really where I'd start on that first one, if he's Morgan, the first thing I would do, or Your Majesty there, is I'd walk right over here. Say, okay, how does he adjust? And I'm like, okay, how's he adjusting? Right? I might even do that a couple more times until he's like, not liking this. It's like, okay, I'm running out of patience. So I'm going to go ahead. At some point, he's going to be like, I'm going to do something. Right? So he might start walking through. Right? So now I'm pushing it around. I do a half moon around him. Right? So now you're creating, he's bringing some tension up. You're creating movements, but there's a lot of opportunity there. So those are the pieces. You want to see what opportunities that creates. But naturally, you brought him up because he wants to do something. So that's a way to create tension. One big thing is I'd like to thank everybody for getting a chance, taking the time out to do these classes. I think our society right now, even though we can't fight, these classes have, I was talking to His Majesty earlier, these classes have given us the ability on a society level to train with people that you never get a chance to train with. You never get a chance to hear what they have to say. I know I've totally enjoyed hearing so many other people talk about stuff because I've learned a ton. And I think one of the biggest pieces as a whole, I think we are learning quickly how we can all teach and train people better because they were really kind of stuck in that mold. Many people that have never taught before are now like, well, I'm going to do a simple Pell drill. And then they're like, okay, I can do the next level of a thing. And they're learning how to teach. And I think in the end, we're going to have a society on a fight game that's even at a higher ability than before. Would I rather be fighting? Absolutely. But having great teachers and developing teachers in critical cycles like this is only going to help us down the road. So it's going to make some great fighters. Next layer up, if you're really, as a good fighter, want to become better, that next layer up is really digging into some sports like boxing, MMA. You can even see tension inside of wrestling and things like that. And finding some things that they do that you're like, I wonder if that'll work, and then try it. You might be really surprised at what happens. So be creative. It doesn't mean Duke Muckety Muck has to create everything and do stuff. You can be creative and do stuff yourself. And it's like, that works pretty good. And don't be like, hey, I'm gonna try this shot against Al-Anon. Well, you're probably not going to be very successful your first shot. So start low, build up, and you may be surprised at the what you've created it works well, and that could be in tension, that could be in movement, that could be in throwing, or that could be even in guard. Depending on how you use your shield now. Yeah. Thank you very much. Bye, guys.